Our adventure continues with mining and construction works at the Death Bridge room, and that continued onto today as well. By day 103, I've started building the last 3 remaining sleeping chambers down at the basement. There were still bits to be mined out, so I worked on that next to completely finish this floor. And right before the day ended, Oswald sought refuge at our settlement, who I welcomed in immediately. And by the following morning, I've finished his room. And the rest of the day, I restocked on wood and continued work at the Death Bridge room. I've begun to transfer the stockpile from the bridge into the hallways. I know it ain't pretty, but currently, that's all the available space that I have in this kingdom. I've also decided to change up the stairwell over here just to have a more symmetrical look to it. Later that evening, 20 enemies arrived looking for Oswald. But we're past playing general now, so here's another kill montage. One escape, but that's alright. We'll be prepared for when they come back. I've done some hunting later that day as well to restock on my food supply. Hunting carried over until today, and the polecats have been very considerate to just sleep right outside my front door, making the lives of my settlers somewhat easier compared to chasing them around the map. I never really had the name for this one, but I guess I'll call it as a barbican. But anyways, later in the evening, as I was finishing things up on the left side of the barbican, I was also visited by a traveling merchant, and his wares I must see. Now this had to be my biggest trade ever made. I basically traded away all my spoils of war for some gold coins, an onager, and some of its ammo. More mining was done today, and on the following day. I really took my time here as I had to do this one by one, making sure no resource falls to the level below. I've also put 4 torches and 4 braziers on top of the bridge to shed some light and warmth within the mountain. Now admittedly, I didn't think this through, and so I will be experiencing a lot of stability problems here. But rest assured, I'll be learning from my mistakes eventually. Again, more mining was done on days 111 and 112. Though I did notice that the collapses were taking place, and so I had to remedy them immediately to prevent any greater collapses. And as I say that, here I am on day 113. Another collapse happened in the mini barbican. I'd have to rethink the design for this one, and this is what I fear the most. Bet you can imagine the amount of frustration I had when making this video. But it did turn out well eventually. Nothing our trusty hammers couldn't fix. And right before the day ended, I got my very first special visitor. A beggar. So, this came in with the latest update 16, and if you didn't catch that one, essentially it's a new event wherein you trade items with the beggar, and there's a possibility the beggar gives you coordinates to a location filled with loot you can take on the world map. And so that's what I did, giving the beggar 15 beeswax in exchange for hidden stash. I almost forgot. To access the world map, I'd need a cartography table, and as well as a caravan halt in order to form a caravan to send to the hidden stash location. And so I had them built later today. And now that they're actually built, I have now access to the region map and the hidden stash loot the beggar mentioned not too long ago. And since the estimated weight was only around 60 to 80 kilograms, I only sent out 2 settlers to gather the loot. And so Claire and Blake went on their merry way. And right before the day ended, Claire and Blake arrived at their destination. Upon arrival at the destination, we are greeted with flora that is common in the marshlands. Inside a small shed, in the middle of the map is the loot the beggar mentioned. And once I got close enough, the boar woke up and attacked my settlers. And now both boars are dead, I have now access to the loot. I'm not gonna lie, since this was my first encounter of this event, I honestly had no idea how to take home loot with me. Hence why I'm still here in the following morning. But eventually I did find the answer, and it's basically just leaving the place. Which brings up this menu of loot to take home. And once I've sorted that out, it was time to head home. Nothing much happened for the rest of the day other than mining works in the levels below the Death Bridge. And on day 116, I have decided to make the mini Barbican be built on top of piles of dirt instead of it being suspended to have a very solid foundation, to avoid any further collapses. And that work carried over onto today. By day 118, I've fully completed the foundation of the mini Barbican, and have started at the foundation of the main entrance as well, just to have symmetry with things. And again, that work carried on over until today, and to today as well. And once the remaining support beams were placed in, it was back to mining out the rest of the stone and dirt tiles. Surely this would keep my settlers busy for the next couple of days. As mining was happening on the background, another settler stumbled upon our kingdom. But with stats like these, I'm afraid we'd be recruiting a nuisance instead of somebody helpful to the settlement. Sorry, Tudhelm, Buckland's doors are closed at the moment. And by midday of 122, I have completely mined out the unnecessary rock and dirt tiles. In preparation for the next project, I have mined out a way for my settlers to get across this chamber beneath the Death Bridge. This would eventually lead to the Great Hall, kitchen, library, workshop, and storages. More mining and construction work were done on day 124. Also, I have learned from my mistake here when digging the supporting walls in the levels below. I would first need to have supporting dirt voxels beside the wall on top of what I'm about to dig out, like this right here. And now that the dirt voxel is built, I can now dig the voxel underneath the pillar without worrying about any collapses. Eventually though, I would learn to not mine that bit out yet, just until I've replaced the lower levels with a limestone block wall. I also wanted to take control of the mountain, so I had to remove any slopes that would lead to me, like this one. I had some field day today cutting a lot of trees as well because for some reason, I thought it to be a great idea to build a too high wall to protect me from any invaders spawning on top of the mountain. But no, I'll soon learn from that mistake the hard way. But anyways, construction on the wall began the following day. And because they're made out of wood, my settlers go through half of the wall pretty quickly. Again, just more damage control being done the whole day. I've expanded towards the other side of the mountain because it occurred to me that my sheep have been eating my crops, which explains why I haven't gotten any barley lately. And so I will be transferring them to the other side and would also be making a stockpile for my hay in the small shed there. I also organized a hunt today to restock our food inventory. And on the following morning, it was back to mining I go, working on corridors and the main chamber depths. And that basically went over the whole day. A couple of days ago, I was also working on another collapse. So, in order to prevent any further collapses, I will be placing more arches. I know it doesn't look as aesthetic, but if this gives me the peace of mind from collapses, sign me up. On day 131, I continued excavating corridors that would eventually lead up to the different rooms, such as the Great Hall, kitchen, and library. All the marked out voxels you see here are either corridors or walls of the room, and what I'll be building on this corner here is going to be the Great Hall. So, I'm just measuring out how long the arches will be since they have a limit of 10 tiles. I'll also be making a small area here for the fire pit to give warmth to my settlers as they feast. More work on the Great Hall was being done today, and on day 133. And as the night fell, another settler wandered into Buckland. Mining and construction stats could be higher, but with no strings attached, who am I to say no? So welcome, Susanna, to Buckland. By the following day, all supporting beams have been replaced and built, which means I can now mine out the rest of the voxels for me to be able to complete the room. By midday of day 135, I have finished mining out the rest of the voxels inside the Great Hall. And all that's left really is the fire pit area. Now, I don't know what happened here in real life as my camera was just fixed on this angle. And finally, on day 136, I've finished mining out the fire pit area. But for some reason, my head wasn't in the same space as I found myself focused on building other things, like this stairwell here leading down the freezer below. I've also decided today to just extend the stairwell leading to the freezer all the way to the main entrance. That way, any fresh hunt could hastily be brought to the freezer or kitchen without going through the sleeping chambers on the other side of the kingdom. And later that day, I've also made another research table to double the output of my chronicles because I need to unlock furniture 3 to fully furnish the Great Hall. Today, I focus on building the stairwell that leads to the kitchen and to the freezer below. Building ladders would definitely be easier building-wise, but traversing through stairs would definitely be easier overall. And that took the whole day today as well. Now, aside from the stairwell, which, by the way, I just noticed I made a small miscalculation, I've also started to plan out how the kitchen would look like. And by the end of the day, this is a rough outline of my kitchen. I know you can't see it yet, but see how it would look like in the end. I've also built the furniture needed for a Great Hall the next day. And for the rest of the day, I primarily work on the stairwell on the side and the kitchen. On the morning of day 142, I planned my research for preserving food too. This, plus a very cold freezer, could permanently last our food supplies a lifetime. And because our stock of limestone has all been turned into limestone blocks, it was that day again of looking for pure limestone outside the kingdom. For some reason, I'm living in a mountain with impure limestone voxels. Here I am noticing that mistake I made with the stairwell, so I made the necessary adjustments by queuing some voxels to be mined out on day 143. And for the rest of the day, other than running all the queued up work in the background, I also took this time to organize my settlers' weapon and armor management. And because my settlers were starving, I organized another hunting party to get some food. And in today's menu, boar meat. More work in the kitchen was done later that day. I was faced with a dilemma today, and that was starvation in my settlement. And so, I find myself re-evaluating my settlers' task management, ensuring that the cooks will actually be prioritizing food production. Again, just more task management re-evaluation today. During the time of this recording, I've been experiencing a bug that my animals get stuck in a corner, like this doggo right here, which then triggers the pathing issues, but hopefully the devs fix that right quick, because that pinging sound is irritating. And again, more work was being done in the kitchen the following day. I've also put these pillars here to give more stability to the floors above. And now that the kitchen has been cleared out, it's time for some finishing touches. Not entirely sure if this covers everything that needs to be put inside the kitchen, but this room can accommodate 2 of the stoves, a butchering table, and a brewery. And by day 148, I learned preserving food too, which enables my settlement to serve packaged meals which lasts longer than your typical prepared meals. Almost forgot to build these mandatory pottery shelves. It ain't a kitchen without them after all. I expanded on the corridors today in preparation for the next room I'll be building. And I've also continued working on the stairwell leading to the freezer below. I spent the whole day today mining out the excess voxels I didn't need in the main chamber. And that continued until the following day. And oh, I've also outlined the next room, but more of that later. And once more, mining work was being done today. And the last few bits the following morning. And later that afternoon, another settler arrived at our doorstep. And with no strings attached yet again, I welcomed Gwen with open arms. And before the day ended, I continued the work on the new room expansion, which carried over until today. And again, the last few bits the following morning. And not for long, another settler, but this time with strings attached. Sorry, Baudry, I just want to focus on building my kingdom now. And while I was finishing up on the library, another beggar arrived at our settlement. Again, I gave him 15 beeswax in exchange for potential information he may or may not know. And luckily for us, he did know something. And before the day ended, the library was good as done with only a few more voxels to mine out. As soon as my caravan arrived at the location, something tells me we've been here. Yep, definitely. So I made the boar's death quick and looted the place, leaving nothing behind. Construction of the library finished this morning as well. Transferring of research tables and building of more bookshelves took place right after, and took the whole day to accomplish. And while continuation of the construction of the bookshelves took place the following day, I also focused on finishing the stairwell leading to the freezer below. Today, however, is more laid back, I'd say. I took a break from all the mining and all the constructing to do some quote-unquote house cleaning. So I moved my tree farm in front of the entrance to the top of the mountain. I've also done some tree cutting to restock on wood supply and expanded some stockpiles where it deemed necessary. And finally, by midday today, I've finally made a way into a freezer. This is going to be a 10 wide voxel type of freezer, and depending on the space needed, I can easily adjust towards the top or the bottom of the freezer. I have worked and worked on this freezer for about 4 days now, but finally by midday today, I got to lay out the flooring for my initial 7x10 underground freezer. On day 165, I also decided to restock on my gold ingots since I'll be making armors very soon. I have also begun working on the corridors leading up to the next set of rooms, the workshop. Again, more house cleaning work was done today by resupplying my wood stock, reorganizing the shelves down at the freezer, and resupplying the gold ingots as well. I found myself working on the corridors again on day 167. That bug where pets get stuck on corners and ladders bothered me once again. I'll have to do something about this. I tried to reload the game, but to no avail. Instead, I even got extorted. You want some of Buckland, eh? Well, come and get them, you faithful sons of England. Don't worry, I'm not trying to censor a cuss word. Apparently, that's what they're called. Turned my attention back to the corridors later that night, filling in the gaps with limestone block walls to serve as foundations before I mined the rest of the dirt and stone voxels. And by the following day, it was just a matter of mining out the rest of the voxels in this corridor. It's been a while since our last incursion, and admittedly, I've been really avoiding them because they take so much time away from my building time. But as their arrival is now imminent, it's just a matter of time. 31 enemies appear at the foot of the mountain across the river, and because the enemies were still building their siege weapons, I took this opportunity to bring the war to them by positioning my arbalests at the mountainside overlooking the enemies. Luckily, I caught them off guard and they never really stood a chance. And it only took 2 more kills before we were victorious. Of course, I also had to deal with the stragglers. But one got away. Surely they'll be back for more. On day 170, I've started to outline the rooms of the workshop. It will be separated into 2 rooms, one for clinging and clanging of metal, and the other room for the sewing of clothes. Now why 2 rooms instead of 1, you might ask? And to that, I honestly don't know. I just wanted to, okay? I have worked and worked and worked and worked and worked and worked and worked on these rooms. But on day 178, because I kept getting the pets being stuck bug, I decided to try to fix it by removing the ladder at the corner and having another way to get to the second floor of the mini Barbican. Now, of course, it required more mining, but at least it ain't the same room as the last 8 days, right? By day 179, I had started to relocate the blacksmith into the workshop, and then eventually add all other workstations that benefit from the workshop room bonus as well. Then I queued in productions that would essentially keep me supplied with the armory and weaponry I'm using, and also to boost my settler's skills in smithing and carpentry through smelting and deconstruction of used items from the spoils of war. On the following morning, I had also started to relocate the sewing station in the other room, and along with it, built 2 more sewing stations, just so I can avoid any bottlenecks in the production of clothes and dummies for training. And once more, as soon as the first sewing station was built, I automated the production line for it. And the same production queue was also put into the other 2 sewing stations as well. I started the first day of winter researching the books needed for us to get Armorer 3. And despite the cold snap, I still had my settlers mining coal out and about. I mean, we do need to stay warm, and we'll need all the types of fuel we can get. On day 182, I also put windows here for aesthetic purposes really, just so it's not only walls you'll see on the right side of the chamber. Then I also filled in the other 2 rooms with a quality bed, a golden brazier, and a weapon rack. A new mining project began on day 183. This time, this will serve as a storage room for both workshops. This is just the first one. The second one will also be under the other workshop. And I worked on that on days 148 and 185. And right before the day ended, another settler arrived at our doorstep, and with no strings attached, yet again, who am I to say no? Day 186 is yet again one of those quote-unquote house cleaning days, where I resupplied wood, organized stockpiles, and overwatch production lines. And on day 187, it was back to mining I go. I've also marked out voxels for mining a new corridor. This would lead to a room dedicated to archery and melee training. I worked on the other half of the storage room on days 188 and 189. Alas, on day 190, our settlement was once again ambushed. 35 enemies arrived from the mountain across ours. This will surely test both our kingdom's strength and our settlers' skills. And without hesitation, they charged toward us. And as soon as an enemy was in range of our arbalests, all hell broke loose. And while the enemies seemed to retreat, I took this chance to reposition half of my forces on the other side of the mountain entrance. What happens next, you'll want to see. Their numbers dwindled from 35 to a few, Loyal war dogs perished defending our settlement, and one of our own settlers fell in battle. We are victorious, yet victory came with a price. Guinevere, at the young age of 35, fell in battle. I cannot let her body rot in the wilderness like how I let raiders' bodies do. Instead, to pay my respect for all the help she gave our kingdom, even for just 37 days, I will bury her properly on top of this mountain across our kingdom. And as we lay her to rest, let this be a reminder to our kingdom that her sacrifice must not be in vain. So, work in the corridors and the storage rooms continued today and the next. I have deconstructed the 2 high wooden walls at the back of my mountain base because I soon realized that should raiders spawn there, they can just easily break through one wall and they already have 100% access to my base. Instead, and I have yet to test this, I would be digging a 2 or even 3 wide moat around the mountain tops and the mountain sides. I am very well aware that I do have my base underneath the earth, so I'll have to be really careful and precise as to where I dig the moat. This may actually be the good thing that came after the loss of Guinevere, being able to recruit more settlers to our kingdom. And again, with no strings attached on Edwin, I welcomed him with open arms. And because I really want to prepare for when the next raid comes, I focus mainly on securing the mountain first. And not for long, another settler came seeking refuge. Sorry Garawas, not today. And for the rest of days 196, 197, 198, and 199, I just mainly focused on digging the moat around our mountain. And on day 200, as my settlers finished the moat, this is just the first step of making our kingdom stronger. We may have fell with the loss of Guinevere, but surely we'll come back stronger.